Welcome to Better Human, Better Gamer, the show about being your better self and making it win and having it make you win more. I think that's the best I've said that so far, but I think that there's still probably some revs to do on that. I think
yeah, sure.
Yeah. So today we have a special guest with us, and his name is Billy. And Billy is from This Week in 40K, a show that we do every Tuesday morning. If you think that people should be groggy in the morning, we will irritate you. We are upbeat. We are happy to talk about 40K, and we will update you on everything that you need to know ish from the week. Who won what tournament? Why are those lists so good? What are the new newses? What are the old newses? No, mostly what are the new newses? So I would love it if you guys joined that. But today we're going to talk about loss. And when I say loss, I mean in the game sense of losing. I also mean of losing people, or losing at work, or losing in any number of ways. In all of these situations, there are things that you can keep in mind to get more from it, to grow, to survive it better. And so we're going to talk about that today. And as I thought about that, I thought, who do I have that will be thoughtful and upbeat as we talk about this to keep us from MASH land? Where we say something funny and then we immediately are depressing for 5 minutes, and then we say something funny and then that's MASH land. Yeah. For those that are old, I don't think the young people know what I'm talking about, Chris.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah. MASH is even pushing the edge of my age recognition, and I turned 40 in 6 weeks.
Okay, all right. Well, my joke is funny.
It is.
So
I was going to range. It was just close.
We need to update the show.
There's a Futurama scene that makes fun of MASH, where there's a bartender robot who has a switch on the back where he goes from funny to somber. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and it's going to be really great because Billy's here, and I would like to start the show with some thoughts. Colin's thoughts, we'll call it. These are the four things that I have been thinking about this week, going around and around in my head. So the first one is Ted Lasso is back. For those that don't know, a large portion of my personal life philosophy is tied up in this television show, Ted Lasso. It is happy, it is funny, it is interesting, it is well acted, and the third season started yesterday, something like that.
Yesterday.
We're actually rewatching it to get up to that point again, my wife and I. So we're not going to be current with it. But as I watched it last night, I was watching the middle of the way through season 2. I thought there's a lot of one-liners in here that are really deep, like human being things. Oh, yeah. Like you're never losing when you do the right thing, or sometimes you do the right thing and you still lose, are both lines from the same episode, and they're both like super relevant to what we're talking about this week.
Yeah.
So I really think it's funny to go back and watch these TV shows and hear a thing come up that's like, oh, well, yeah, that was in my head, and that has been bouncing around since you said these words. And because it was in between funny words, it didn't hit me. So sure. That's my first thing. And I know, Billy, you're excited about Ted Lasso being back.
Ted Lasso is one of my absolute favorite shows. It was one of the rare things that was hyped as high as someone can hype it and then was better. I was late to coming to Ted Lasso. I was like, it can't be this good. And it was that good. Not that there are some pieces where I would have some notes more in the second season than the first. But yeah, I love Ted Lasso.
Yeah, there's some. The second season does have some parts of it that are very meh, but it's still a wonderful show, even with those parts during it. I will say that my rant about the last episode is softening as I watch it again. There is more leading up to the end elements than I had given the show credit for. But that's not what we're here to talk about. The second thing I'd like to share with people is that I've thought a lot about if a woman having dumps like a truck. I've thought a lot about this quite a bit because that's a really weird thing to say. And the vibe of the song is that he is in fact complimenting her for having dumps like a truck.
Yes.
And for years, I have thought to myself, that can't possibly be a compliment. I will never use that to refer to a woman. Today, I have Googled and found out that the artist that wrote said song, in fact, does have an explanation. And I'm here to share this explanation unless you guys would like to guess first.
Oh, Cisco likes his women big. What?
It's more specific than that.
Like a truck.
I mean, this is just a minefield of things that I am.
Okay, before anybody gets accidentally offensive, the idea is that when a dump truck backs up, it beeps. That's the general premise. So if a woman has a posterior that would attract such attention when backing up, she has dumps like a truck.
Yeah. Oh,
I love it. I love it even more.
You guys didn't? Okay. I thought that was common knowledge.
Thanks for just really raining on my attempt at humor.
No, but
Billy, I really appreciate that. That was very helpful.
If you do want one of those things, the milkshake that brings all the boys to the yard, the internet does not have an answer as to what specifically that milkshake is. Any conversation beyond that gets off the family-friendly train real fast, but it is an actual mystery.
I see. That's weird because I think I have a pretty good understanding of what that one means.
Many people do, and they're all in the same vein, but the specific answer is a mystery.
Oh, okay.
I was pretty clear in my mind, but okay.
Yeah, Is this like when the guy who made GIFs came back and told us they're GIFs, and we were just like, "Come on."
No.
It was a song on a very long road trip I was on, and I asked the rest of the car, "Hey, what do you think the milkshake is?" And there were 4 separate answers, all in the same vein, but separate and distinct. And we Googled it, and the Googles were not able to say definitively, this is what she is referring to as her milkshake.
Paradox. The milkshake paradox. I love it.
I'm sure this is what we wanted to talk about in an episode about losing.
Well,
but
before I forget, I think, Colin, the important thing to remember about Dumps Like a Truck is we have OSHA to thank for that song.
Oh, because that's where the beeping backup comes from?
An OSHA or a Department of Transportation law. So thank you.
Yeah. So I think about these things. These are things I think about. And I have 2 more. And the next one I'm really curious about. This is going to be a question and answer situation. So first of all, people with my particular brain chemistry of crazy potatoes, like my particular brand from the supermarket of crazy potatoes, typically are terrible at taking care of themselves. Showering, shaving, brushing teeth, combing hair, blah, 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 all the things. And I am relatively good at those things. However, I mean, I'll do laundry and, I'll shave. I shave for important things because I can't shave every day because I've got the skin of a baby and it will have problems, but that's not what anyone wants to hear about. So the point is, I hate the having to brush my teeth, but do not mind the act of brushing my teeth. I don't want to go do it. I don't want to make time for it. I acknowledge that it's important. I don't find it unpleasant. I don't find it annoying, but the act of having to do it twice a day and having to remember to do it is very annoying to my brain. And I thought I would check in if there are hygiene things like this for other people, because I tell the kids to brush their teeth. Like, I acknowledge the importance of brushing your teeth. I'm just irritated that it has to happen.
My only comment that springs to mind is in the way of remedying that, and the way I've done that is I have to cluster tasks. So when I get up in the morning and I take my medicine and my others wash my face or whatever I'm doing in the morning, the teeth get brushed because I'm there at the sink. All my stuff is there. I'm doing it, and it's sort of one thing instead of a bunch. So,
and this is part of the problem I've had as of recently, is that I've lost structure in my life. And it turns out that ADHD wants structure wicked bad. So I jotted down on my notes, we need to go through the survey we did, but also talking about building structure where there isn't structure for yourself would be really a helpful conversation for me. And we can get someone who's very organized and disciplined, like maybe Chuck, who's really good at that, really good at, this is work time, this is hobby time, this is family time, and doing that. John in the chat says he also feels similarly about brushing his teeth, so that makes me feel better. I bet Billy brushes his teeth very regularly with no complaint.
In the morning, yes, because my mouth is a vile place otherwise. And then at night, just because I need to. But what you were saying, I actually just find that for almost all activities. I would much rather allow inertia to keep me doing exactly what I'm doing, and I would like to never change it. And then I enjoy whatever I'm doing. But it's the act of changing from where I was to where I am. I get mild anxiety attacks depending on what is actually involved in that change.
Oh, interesting.
God help if I have to call someone on the phone.
Okay.
I will put everything off unless they are family members or closest of friends. I just actually get anxiety at the thought of doing that. So it's the change of status quo for me.
Yeah. Something that I actually heard, I saw a video this past week was one of the things is, yes, it's brain chemistry. But the other thing is the way that folks process problems. So you process with your subconscious mind and you get it all worked out in your head. And you've got this plan, it's perfect, and you go to do it, but that requires a different part of your brain to actually do it. The doing is separate from the thinking and planning. So that was an interesting insight that you've learned it, you've taught your subconscious brain how to do it, but now the other part of your mind really doesn't understand or doesn't get the importance. So that's kind of an important dynamic. Thought it was neat.
Yeah, that is interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way before. I there's a lot of things you do that you're not thinking about what you're doing, right? It's muscle memory. Yeah. Typing. Most people that are competent typists aren't thinking about the particular letters they're hitting. They just think of a word and their fingers type the word, right? Anybody who's played Guitar Hero, is a big hobby of mine when I was younger. Knows how well your brain can memorize patterns and then just recognize the pattern and do the pattern. So yeah, that makes sense too, because if I get to the sink and I put the toothpaste and the toothbrush in my hand, it's done, right? I'm going. It's going to be fine.
Yeah,
it'll happen. It's like a friend of mine always used to say, and this is a little bit tangential, but a friend always used to say, the only thing hard about going to the gym is when you actively get in the car and go to the gym. You're not going to drive to the gym and get out of the car and say F it and then get back in the car and drive back home.
You might, right? Depending on the day you're having, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess maybe the phone call you got on the way there, I don't know. But the idea that you're there and so you'll do it is great. And so I probably just need to think of it as that, as whenever I walk past the sink at night when bedtime is approaching, it's probably the way to do that. But I have this thing called the ADHDs, and it is very hard for me to perceive responsibilities when I don't want there to be responsibilities around me. So we'll see how that works.
Yep.
Well, I mean, the thing with the gym, if I can have 1 second to, having spent too much of my time being educated, Aristotle basically said that all virtue is habits, and the way to improve your virtues are to create habits so that you're not actually thinking about it, you're just doing it. And to that point of going to the gym, it's the going to the gym, it's the habit of doing it, and you have to build it up, and it's hard. But then once you have the habit, you have the habit. And so if you just You never criticize yourself for not doing something early because you have the habit of not doing something, and you're working at building the habit of doing something.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that very explanation used by a personal trainer, talking about, when they encounter someone who's not really used to that kind of exercise, that kind of routine, they tell them, just look, go in and lift weights for 5 minutes and then go home.
Yeah.
And then
Just building the habit of going to the gym.
Go back a couple of days later and do something different, and then go home. And just really ease into it that way. And training the brain is really tough. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Here's the fourth thing I've been thinking about. Participation trophies. I think most people that know me would think that I would be all for participation trophies. And I thought about that a lot this week. And it leads into our topic, which is why I brought it as my fourth item. I like that everyone who worked at doing the thing has something that helps them remember that they did the thing. I like the reinforcement of walking by the shelf and seeing, oh yeah, I tried to do t-ball or baseball or whatever for the season, and it was really fun. And because I put that hard work into doing the thing, here's my memory of that. I like that. Excuse me. What I don't like is teaching people that it's okay to not care if you win. Now, I'm not saying teaching them that it's okay to lose. It is okay to lose. It's absolutely okay to lose. But you need to try to win. And there needs to be incentive to try to win. And when I talk to new parents in particular, there's this kind of the world is, we don't need to teach competition. The world, everyone will just get along. As I think about it, competition is everywhere. It's getting a job. It's at work. It's keeping your job. You want to think there's not competition in keeping your job? If they can find someone that will do as good of a job as you will for less money than you, then you're absolutely competing with that person. Competing at 40K or card games or board games, or even some people who feel like they have to have a nicer car than their neighbor, right? There's all of these things that are just competition, and it's everywhere. And you have to be good at it. I'm sorry, if you want to be a successful human being, you need to be good at competing at least the things that are important to you. Mm. And in that learning to compete, you also learn to lose. And learning to lose is super important. But my concern is about participation trophies, which, by the way, I know nothing about other than the concept. And I'm not saying that this is my official opinion on them. I'm just using them as the catalyst of these thoughts. Sorry, everybody. So my problem is, if you soften losing to it doesn't matter situation, now we're not trying as hard and we're not learning as much. You guys with me on this? Was that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm casting myself back to the days of yesteryear. Just trying to remember as a kid, the importance of, just even playground wins and losses, that sort of.
But did you care? Because you don't care a lot about winning and losing at most things.
I do not.
Your personality.
I do not.
Yep.
I am the board game guy who's rooting for everybody. We had a good time. Yay. You won this time. Maybe next time. That's us.
But you do try to win.
I try, but yeah, I do try. Sure, of course. Yeah, you have to.
There's lots of people that don't, and they're annoying to play board games with. I don't care if you're good at the game, but you have to try, or I'm going to get irritated. Yes, because the mechanics of the game may be ruined by you not trying.
Yeah, then you should not be playing games if that's the case. If it's that big an issue.
Define your fun, share your fun, and align on your fun before playing a game with someone. That's my take on it. As someone whose fun in games is idiosyncratic and varies from game to game. This is why I can never find anyone to play D&D with, because everyone who wants to play D&D with me wants to tell a story, and I want to create my level 1 wizard who can walk up to Tiamat and one-shot her. and there's just fewer of the latter people than the former in my experience.
Can we do both?
I've yet to find those people, and honestly, my fun is not in I stretch my hands out and from my hand streams a string of magic that goes on blah blah blah. No. All right, I use my prestige class number this to cast this spell, and I have this many points left, and you take this much damage. That's actually where my fun is.
Yeah,
I rarely enjoy the storytelling to that same extent.
Okay, that's fair.
We should talk more about that.
It does not make me want to play D&D with you, because we can just play board games where you smash things and kill them. You don't need D&D for that.
That's true.
Yeah, I think there's incredibly fun mechanics in D&D that lead to that kind of min-max.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
But
fair enough.
But to like just expand on this, like, totally agree with you on participation trophies, that they're good in making people feel safe, but you also need to have incentive to excel. And I think that's the balance that you're trying to hit. And I think, in the concept of gaming, like, there are some games where I am actually like winning matters and is a huge part of my fun. And there are some games, the ones that have brought us all together, where I think I have an accurate understanding of my skill set. And, 3 and 2 at a 5-round event feels real good to me, because that's sort of where I'm going to end up. So it's setting expectations and meeting them is sort of how I deal with fun and losing.
Yeah, the biggest thing to keep in mind with, if we're just talking about brain mechanics, not mouth mechanics, brain mechanics is and I tried to explain this to my daughter with some success. You must lose in order to learn. You have to get things wrong in order to get them right in the future. You'll never ever learn something if you're just that's memorization. That's not learning. So if you're intending to really expand your skill set and get better at something, it's inevitable. You're going to lose.
Let me riff on that for a second, because that's something I've thought about a lot. There are lots of things I'm not good at that I just don't care about, right? If we go bowling, I'm going to have a great time and I don't care how I do, but I'm going to throw that ball so hard with my giant 6'4" frame down that lane. And I'm going to get some pins, and it's going to be great. But there are things that I do care about. My brain is extremely excited to be given strategy and tactics problems. It wants them bad. It needs them. And I have to feed it to them and feed them to it. And as a result, it wants to win. And in board games and 40K, and when I played Magic the Gathering, I have always been someone that wins a lot more than I lose at those games. And I'm sorry that is me being it's not me gloating. This is a self-awareness show. I win a lot more than I lose, okay, at games. And what's hard about that is everybody says what Chris just said, that you have to lose to get better. And he's right. At the same time, though, there is a way to get better while winning.
Yes.
By looking at micro losses.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yes, precisely.
So, this is something that in practice games, if I don't watch my tone and watch my demeanor, it upsets my opponents. Because I am a rapid computer at games, and I'm watching every transaction that I do, and I immediately know if I've messed it up, or I find out that I've messed it up later. And I often will tell someone that I've made the mistake, because I'm an auditory learner, and saying it out loud means that I process it further. And if it's like, oh man, I can't believe blah, 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 I'm so mad at myself, my opponent does not like that. But if I'm like, hey, you know what I just realized? If I had done this, it would have been better. And my opponent goes, oh yeah, and we laugh together, right?
Yeah.
My internal dialogue is too negative about this, and that's a journey that we'll talk about another day. I'm too mean to myself about this, but when I asked my good friend Tyler, why am I good at 40K? Because I didn't know. And he gave me a very thoughtful response. One of the things he said is, you don't make the same mistake twice. And I think that's that microtransaction processing that I'm doing.
Yes.
But the problem is I'm beating myself up for those micro losses, right? That's the issue. What's up, Billy? Oh, he means he's going to be right back.
Oh.
I thought he was trying to talk.
Yeah.
No.
No.
You've got this, this string of transactions, and every single one of them is a win-loss scenario
Along
in my
the line.
brain.
Sure.
And it's win, loss. Oh, can't believe you lose. Win. And so that's how I handle that.
Yes.
For those that are naturally better at games than their friends. That's how you get better while playing your friends. Is you look at someone's got to be the friend that's the best at the game. That person can get better by watching the specifics of the thing he's trying to do. And like it's like going to golf with your friends when you're a way better golfer and you just try to work on your swing yourself, right? That's what that's like.
Yeah. I am less an auditory learner. I'm very much a visual learner, and seeing someone do something and then doing it afterward that's my sweet spot. Being, YouTube is like the place. That's where I live a lot of the time. I need to replace something. I'm installing a dehumidifier. I'm, whatever it might be. Watch somebody do it. I could read a blog and get the same information, but if I see it, it's done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so before we go any farther on this incredibly fluid and skillful transition into our topic, I want to point out that we are not experts. We are not mental health professionals. I will point out that the guy that suggested negotiating the entire contract before playing the game is a lawyer
who spent 10 years teaching people how to negotiate.
Yeah, right. So that's funny.
I'm gonna just pop this in.
Oh yeah, these clowns are not doctors.
Yeah. Sorry,
we're not medical experts. We're not mental health experts. We are, however, sharing things that we've been told by those people, or things that we've read online, or things that this 20-year-old is teaching us about ADHD. Which why are your videos so good? Are your parents helping you, Connor? What is going on here?
No, apparently not. Yeah.
Is he just a genius? Is that the deal?
I think he's literally that's who he is. That's what his brain does. His brain processes crap like that, and that's how he channeled it. He just posted like just a couple of days ago, again his very first video of him just kind of being on and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna try and process this stuff and just do it and make videos." And I can be funny. Sure, I'll be funny. And it's like, thousands of videos later now.
It's amazing though. It's really hard for an ADHD person to hyperfixate for that long. He's clearly hyperfixating on the project, right? It's obvious that that's what's happening. But it's amazing for it to go that long without him having. Maybe he did have motivation problems.
He's got multiple fixations like that though, because he's always talking about all the other things that he's still doing. Oh, now I'm knitting, and what about those? Oh, that was my painting era.
Yeah. So okay. Anywho, so yeah, we're gonna share our stories about our lives. If you'd like to know more, feel free to reach out. If you want to talk privately, if you are concerned about things we're talking about, check with the actual professional that does that thing for you. If you think you might be neurodivergent in some manner, I strongly encourage you to get that checked out. Men's mental health in particular in their, as grown-ups in their 30s, 40s, 50s is a very minimized topic in our country. And it's a very, very big deal.
And super important. Yeah.
Mental health is just health. It's just, you would go to the doctor if you had a cold. Go to the doctor,
And to that point, I mean, since most of the folks around here are guys who generally may not be going to the doctor as much, go to the doctor, get a doctor, go and get a checkup. It's amazingly helpful. Can be.
Also, you want cancer early, you don't want cancer late.
Catching it.
Yeah, it's
catch it.
What?
Yeah, never mind.
Okay. I didn't mean you want cancer at like 22 versus 55, but whatever.
It was either way, but still, yeah. Either way,
fair. So, right. So we are not experts. That is a good thing for everyone to keep in mind as we talk about this. But let's start with talking about what we mean and why it's so important to lose. So Chris, you talked about this extensively. Why don't you fill in why don't we go back up a little bit and talk about that? So what do you mean?
About having to lose.
Yeah, let me change it entirely.
Okay.
Billy,
Hmm.
why is losing important?
Losing is important because it forces you to assess, it gives you the opportunity to assess what was your goal and how did you fall short of it. On the one hand, in terms of optimizing your outcomes. Also, it gives you the opportunity for introspection to assess what you could have done versus what you did and relay it to that outcome. And finally, just in my experience, and I've given the spiel to a bunch of people before, very few people win at every single interaction they ever have in their life. And the sooner you learn how to process something that didn't turn out exactly right and deal with it in a healthy way, the better the rest of your life is going to be.
It's fair. Yes. And when you watch popular comedians like what's the young woman, Taylor Tomlinson, I think is her name, has all these TikTok videos, right, where she's talking openly about her craziness, and there's lots of guys doing the same. You know how everyone's laughing? That's because everyone relates.
Yeah.
It's not that there's two people in the audience being like, oh yeah, she's crazy and I really have my crap together. No, we're all just trying to figure it out as we go. Everyone's screwing up. Everyone's getting better. Not everyone's getting better. Some people are not trying very hard, but everyone's screwing up. Everybody's trying to make it work, right? Yeah. Trying to get through this, right?
With the tools they've got. That's
which may not have the appropriate tool.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, Billy, man, the way you put it was very well architected. I like it a lot.
So, how I said I spent 10 years teaching people how to negotiate? So I did this in law school at UC Berkeley and UC Hastings. And specifically for Berkeley, you have to be really successful at your life to get there. And then I take them onto a competitive negotiation team where they're going up against other people who are really good. And this might be their first time where they would go into a competition and they would lose. And then I would have these 25-year-old law students who are straight A's, 1600 SATs, 180 LSAT, 4.0 Berkeley Law that lost. And it would break their brain. And they'd be sitting in the hallway of a law school just, what happened? Oh my God. I'm like, yeah, you lost. It happens. This is what we do with it. So I've actually spent a lot of time working with people through this process.
That speaks to an importance of being circumspect in your life, and focus is great. Focus is important, and it's absolutely necessary if you're being competitive in something like anything, really. Yeah. But being that focused does come with dangers. There are pitfalls, and not being able to sort of gauge that against sort of real life anymore is I can't imagine.
Yeah. One of the best things that ever happened to turn me into as well adjusted of a person as I am is being on a god awful lacrosse team in high school that never won a single thing and having to deal with just losing horribly and embarrassingly over and over again in my teens. Yeah. It was a very good learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when you think about at the most minute level, losing to get better, when you think about that, like in 1987, I received a regular Nintendo and I played Super Mario Brothers. And at first I couldn't get past the second level. And I kept going and I kept going and I kept going. And then I got to the third level and then I couldn't get past the third level. So why is it that each time I'm able to get farther? Well, not each time, but why is it in aggregate I'm able to get farther and farther as I play? Because I'm learning from the mistakes I'm making, right? Yeah. And it's the most basic thing, right? Did you learn to ride a bicycle? Did you learn to ride a skateboard? Have you learned to juggle? Have you learned literally any task where you have to get better at it over time? The thing that's teaching you about getting better is the act of failing, right?
Yeah.
It's the act of not being perfect, which none of us are.
What I have this phenomena. It's related. So anytime I do something for the first time, a new game, a new experience, a new thing, I am just top shelf, like the best you could expect, like from oh my gosh, you've never played this before, that kind of experience. The second time I play, complete trash, just trash, and then I have to work really hard to just climb that hill to get back where I was the very first time I did it. So, and that happens all repeatedly in different venues, not just games.
Yeah, I want to share. So that's the importance. Now, the sort of loss that we're discussing here could be a game, right? Losing at a game. It could be losing at a competition of any kind. It could be losing your job or your wife or your pet, or all of these things are loss. Okay, and all of them suck to some degree or another. None of all these are all things. Losing is by definition not a thing that you're excited about, right? So we have all of these reasons that we might be experiencing loss, and I'm going to get a little vulnerable for a second. I don't want, for a number of reasons, I don't want to go into specifics on this. So I'm going to be relatively careful about what I say in this particular topic, much more so than normal. Please bear with me, everyone, on that. Last year, so I am someone that from the outside looking in has my stuff together. I have done very well in my career. I have a great wife. I have wonderful children. I have great animals. I do all these great things for Warhammer 40K. I've got these big hobbies, right? The problem is, inside of all of that is a human being who isn't always doing his best work. And Stephanie and I both struggled really bad with a lot of aspects of our lives last year. Mental health, for sure, but keeping up with basic things we needed to do. And while in this murkiness of trying to find our way out of the swamp, we made a lot of decisions that put us further into the swamp. One of the things I always call back to is we have 3 dogs. We don't want 3 dogs. We want 2 dogs, but we have 3 because at some point we made a bad decision and now we have 3 dogs. I love all my dogs. I don't want to pick which one I'm not going to have. But in this alternate reality, I didn't know about the 3rd dog. So but it's too much. We continually add responsibilities that we don't need because we make bad decisions. Well, the end result of this is that in my personal life, am in a really bad spot right now. I have rallied my mental health, but not fast enough. I am trying to be a better parent. I'm trying to be a better husband. I'm in the worst health of my life. And I am unemployed for the first time in my entire life. So, and I'm trying to find work, which is a task I've only been gone and grabbed from the place I am and put into a new place. It's the only thing I've done. So this no job, no idea when I'm going to get paid again, talking to recruiters, getting interviewed is something I've never done before. And being unemployed, even though the story of why I am is not actually that bad of a story, it is absolutely failure. And that is how my brain has processed it. And I am grieving. That is the correct description of what I'm dealing with. I have never failed in any way at my career to this level in my career before. I'm not saying that they got rid of me because I suck and I was terrible. Like, it's a more complicated situation than that, but that is still how it feels. So I'm at a point right now where I have to pivot from, man, I can't believe I failed at this. I have to pivot that into, oh man, I got a severance package and I have this amount of time where I just get to go pick a place to work. I get to see what's out there. I get to see what those people need. I get to decide where the place to work is. And then I get to learn a new thing. And I love learning new things. So there's a lot of positive there, but the positive is wrapped up in this burrito of sadness and frustration. Burrito of Sadness is going to be my autobiography name, I think, is Burrito of Sadness.
That's a good one.
I haven't seen this Triangle of Sadness movie, but Stephanie and I laugh at it every time we see it advertised on the screen. I saw that it got an Academy Award for something, but like, or it was up for Best Picture, I think. But I don't have no idea what it's about. I just can't imagine wanting to watch a movie called Triangle of Sadness.
The very brief bit I heard leading up to the Oscars was it just was an emotional kick in the junk for like 2 hours. So,
oh my God. Yeah, I definitely don't need that right now.
A well-made emotional kick in the junk, but
yeah,
not my jam.
Yeah, go watch Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's just fun and wonderful.
I'll try it.
So I'm in a really difficult spot emotionally where I'm trying to process loss and take from that loss. Here's how I'm going to succeed. Here's how I'm going to do better. And that's why I asked Chris if today could be the topic for today.
Yeah.
So I wanted everybody to kind of know where I'm approaching this from. I've told the story before of immediately winning at 40K and then losing at 40K and realizing that I didn't actually know what I was doing. This is what we're talking about. So what I'd like to do is start off by talking about feeling better about loss, because I think that the upset of failure or loss is a big part of the issue. I think that if you care about trying to succeed at the thing that you're doing, then obviously you're going to be upset when you don't do it because you cared, right? You wanted to do the thing and you didn't do the thing, but you wanted to do the thing. And I think what gets in the way of people perceiving that opportunity as a situation to get better, they instead have to struggle through the I failed at this because I'm not good enough, or I failed at this because I'm stupid, or because I'm bad at things, or because I, whatever, right? So how have you guys, let's start with Billy. Billy, has that been a thing for you at all in your life?
Oh, yeah, tons. Yeah.
Okay.
So the easy one is, we apparently on this show, I'm talking about the fact that I'm a lawyer, and I actually very technically only very recently became a certified lawyer who can practice law, but I did it. I graduated from law school in 2012, passed the bar on my first try, passed the MPRE on my first try, didn't have a job lined up, so didn't file the paperwork to become a lawyer. Not my most admirable moment. If you
I
don't
feel you so hard right now.
Yeah. If you don't file that paperwork for 5 years, those tests go away. And then later in life, you meet a wonderful person, you want to start a family with them. And you know what's really useful for that? The ability to legally practice law. But then you have to go back and retake all of those tests because you failed to file some paperwork. And doing that and then not passing all of those tests on the first try, let me tell you, being 2 out of 3 on the California bar exam, while wonderful, and I've passed the bar exam twice now, it's not something I recommend. I've definitely dealt with those feelings of I have failed because I am a failure. And what I try to do with it is, all right, what was it about my actions? What part of it did I have control over that I could control better going forward? And that has been the one thing to help me. The other thing that I would say broadly is, and I mentioned this earlier, is expectations management. Knowing what is a likely outcome given what I put in, and then calibrating my response to it based on that, as opposed to just what is the best outcome and calibrating based on that. Those are 2 things that I have found to be very helpful.
Do you think, though, that there's I think that in general, people don't let themselves feel emotions in our country, at least. Do you think that there's
anyway.
What's that?
Not allowed to show them anyway. You can feel them all you want.
Do you think, so for me, let me, instead of asking Billy the question, I'll share my view of this. I'm not great at memorizing. I'm not great at remembering everything, but I'm a very quick thinker. And so when a problem happens, my brain immediately figures out, okay, this is one of the ways we're going to solve this. And if I screw up, I try to immediately pivot into okay, this is what happens. This is what happens. This is what happens. But it's really important to, if the thing that has happened is a thing that's worthy of sadness, it's important to be sad first. Mm-hmm. For me, for sure, because I didn't learn to have emotion until I was like 32 years old. And suddenly I was just crying at random times. And my therapist is like, yeah, because before now you weren't going to let yourself do that, but now you have a house that you live in and you have friends and you have a career and you know that you're not going to starve to death. You're not in emergency survival mode anymore. So your body's like, oh man, we have all these feels. So what about that, Billy? Or Chris, whoever? What about the idea? Oh, Billy's got something. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Billy's got a lot on. Well, Billy has very strong feelings about this.
Great.
Emotions are irrational. That does not mean they're irrelevant. They are fundamentally, by their nature, irrational. They are the non-rational part of your brain expressing itself. But they are incredibly vital to the way that you move through the world. And if you try to only allow the rational part of your brain to control the way that you deal with things, you're going to do exactly what Colin says, is not cry and then for 32 years and then all of a sudden be a crying wreck. You need to give your emotions time. You need to allow them to work themselves out completely. They don't need to take over, but they have their space. They have their utility. And so you let the emotions be the emotions, let the irrational be the irrational, give it that space. And then once you're back on some semblance of sound footing, then the rational piece can come in. It's a challenge. It's not fun, but you're not always behind the wheel of a car that has all of its wheels attached to the ground. Sometimes you're in a skid and you just drive into the skid.
I have a line that I say with my wife that makes me feel comfortable. It's not a line for her, it's a line for me. And because it's almost like what's a thing that you say all the time for yourself? Not a creed, but what?
Affirmation.
Yeah, it's an affirmation. I say, I am feeling X. Like, I am feeling anxious. I am sad. I'm angry. And then after that, I say, and I know that it's not logical, but I am still feeling that way. And my wife doesn't need to hear that because she is a woman and they tend, not all women, they tend to be better at understanding emotion versus logic than men are. I think that all of us are nodding and we all have women in our lives. So I think that's a relatively I don't think that's groundbreaking. And so for her, it's very easy to see the difference. But I was 30 whatever years old when I realized that there's a difference. I didn't know that. I was just dealing with the logic, not with the feels. So I have a hard time when I have failure, when I have loss, being like, okay, before I fix this problem, before I go find a job, I'm going to need to take time to just be with me.
Ooh, man. Go,
Chris.
Yeah, I've been going through it as well. And part of the thing that resonates there is sort of personal boundaries and knowing yourself and really being aware of your energy changing. That sounds really touchy-feely and out there, but it's a real thing. I did not realize up until recently how much mental processing I was doing on all of these other things that really didn't amount to much. They were sort of necessary things, but I was obsessing over them because for various reasons. So I definitely understand that, and don't ask me how, besides through therapy, a really good therapist, sort of working through that and calming my brain down enough to be able to recognize when that's happening now. So I'm not in automatic mode anymore, where I would immediately, my heart would race. I would, it would be, okay, it's on. Now I can come from a much more solid place of, oh, this thing is happening. Let's look at that. And it goes there. It's really good. And the one word that I wrote down was perspective. When you were talking about your internal critic, trying to keep perspective, big picture, but specifically think about what's the actual fallout of this. We were talking about micro failures. That's generally what you're talking about. You're processing quickly. You're doing lots of cycles. You're thinking about lots of things very quickly. And all of those things tend to kind of blend together and become maybe the same priority or similar priority. And it's really important, I think, in that sort of a situation to be able to sort those and really at least turn it down from 11 to 9, and just give yourself that little extra time to think through, am I being hard on myself because it's an ideal I'm striving towards, or am I being hard on myself because my family might not eat? Those are two very different results, two very different concerns. And putting those in their proper places is super, super important.
We had an opportunity. I want to go back and add a footnote to something that I said, because now that I've thought about it more, I don't think I did a good job. When I was talking about the types of loss we're dealing with, we aren't really dealing with the loss of a loved one or a pet, because those are situations where you can learn something about yourself, right? You as yourself, you can mature and you can change as a person with the things you learn from that experience. But that's not about failure, and that's not about, unless you let them. No, no, we're not going there. It's not about failure, and it's not about seeing how to get better from there. But I do want to use a pet. We lost a pet dying, that's not the part of the story we're going to focus on. My older kids who had grown up with this dog, this dog had been around longer than them, and they were 13 and probably 11, and they went for the summer to see Biodad in Texas. And while they were gone, their beloved dog passed away, which was a absolutely miserable experience that we're not going to talk about. And so when they got back, and we waited till they got back to tell them about it, because we didn't want them to deal with this. They're young. We don't want them to deal with this when they're away from home. And so we told them when they got home, in the car. And the thing that I said that I'm very happy that I said is, it's okay to be sad. In fact, we should be sad. And we should be sad for as long as it feels right to be sad.
Yeah.
Right? Let's be sad. I'm sad. Stephanie's sad. Let's all be sad together. But let's remember, right, that this animal was greatly loved by us, and that this animal had a good life and all this stuff. And then when we're done feeling sad, then we'll get another dog, honestly. But I didn't say that. That's what actually happened, but that's not what I said.
That's something that we go ahead, please.
No, you go ahead.
No, I'm just saying we deal with that. We deal with that often with our daughter, because she, oh my gosh, dearly loved both of her grandmothers. They've both passed, and it's a real struggle for her emotionally, because she, when my wife and I were working, I would drop her off at grandma's house, and she would spend the whole day there with grandma and grandpa, and it was the sort of a picture book situation, and she just, they can do no wrong. And now, dealing with that grief and those feelings that come back up, we deal with it in much the same way. It's being able to tell her, okay, I understand you're sad. I miss her too. And being able to sort of refocus that and say, but here's the thing. She wouldn't want that. She wouldn't want you feeling that way. I mean, it's okay your feelings are great, but she wouldn't want you to be sad. She wants you to remember all the good stuff and all the fun stuff. So do you remember that time? And that's sort of a map for a dialogue that we use often, just because that's a thing that we deal with a lot. So, if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, it is for sure. Billy, you have anything to say? I think we're pretty deep on this, but you want to mention anything before I move us to the next section?
The only thing that I would say to all of this is, one of the turns of phrase and turns of mind attached to it that I've used is, do you need comfort or do you need solutions? And when someone's in distress, specifically my wife, I use that saying quite a bit. Do you want to be comforted or do you want us to solve it? And be prepared to do either. And again, to Colin's thing about, women are stereotypically better at emotions. Men stereotypically default to, there's a problem, let me solve it. And sometimes,
and then after that, you pick up the beats, and then the DJ revolves it.
Sometimes.
But
you can't afford to do that all the time. Colin,
sometimes the right thing is to comfort.
This is such an important point. Ego. We need to do a show on that, because ego is a super.
You have to read the thing, because there's people that are only listening to this.
So detaching your ego from the task. and taking intentional time to process and release your feelings, to really be there in the moment, feel the feelings, and not get in your own way and say, oh, it's not manly or it's not right for me to feel the way that I feel. So that's super important to be aware of that part of you, that ego. That's a very important survival thing for sure, but it can be problematic when you're trying to change behavior.
Yeah, I think the idea of detaching your ego is really a good concept. Go ahead, Billy.
Yeah, I was just going to say the John Wayne stereotype of the American male who is stoic and riding off into the sunset to find the girl from the Indians and kill them. And I'm using those terms intentionally because that's what the movies were. Like that is toxic and it is bad. And the strong thing to do is to actually be introspective, actually sit with the pain, actually examine it and work through it, as opposed to shoving it in your saddlebag and riding off into the sunset for 3 hours, because Searchers is just a boring movie.
I will say that also, I appreciate your use of the word stoic. That has been so misused and turned around in our society. It's a shame, because the Stoics, that is just not at all what it's about. Like the connotation that's usually used, where it's this, stone-faced, emotionless thing. That's not at all what it is. But yeah, it's a shame that is what people sort of cling to as that's being a strong dude.
It's being a fragile person.
We're watching. So one of our kids watched this Outer Banks TV show, which don't watch it. It's not good. So Stephanie and I are watching it to see what we're trying to learn about our kids, right? Our kid says he's watching the show. We're going to watch several episodes of the show and see what it's about. And the main character of this show is a teenager who is drunk most of the time, does not live with adult supervision, gets in a lot of fist fights, and does a lot of tomfoolery and shenanigans. And we're watching this and thinking that the idea that this is a teenage construct is insane. Right? The idea that there's this character that doesn't go to school and has figured out a way to live off the grid and is drunk all the time and getting in all these fistfights with no repercussions, right? Like, that's simply not what growing up is. Like, maybe it is depending on where you live, but this is like a guy in an upscale community.
Yeah.
So like he's getting in fights with like, it doesn't matter. Maybe my analogy is bad. But my point is, regardless of my analogy, my point is the media does a really good job of telling us how men or teenage boys are supposed to be, and they're not always correct. In fact, they're almost never correct.
Let's tie this. Can I tie that back to something you said at the start of the show? Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso is wonderful at showing actually emotional, vulnerable, incredibly manly men. Roy Kent is a manly freaking man who feels his feels. Yes. And that's part of why it's so wonderful.
Yeah, I put my pants. What of it? Like, nothing. I got nothing.
Okay.
So you put your pants. All right. Okay. So let's get back to shallower depth. Let's talk now about learning. Let's talk more about games. Let's think about more from games, hobbies, sort of point of view, and talk about processing loss, and then getting better. Right. So, especially early in my 40K career, I had a really hard time losing. I wasn't good at it. And because I wasn't good at it, the following things happened. I upset people. I lost friends. I gave myself miserable anxiety about playing the game that I love, to the point where going to tournaments was stressful and in between rounds was aggravating at times. And I lost games that I should have won because my brain gave up too early. And on top of all of this, I got a reputation for being that person. And that felt like poo. Big, steamy, hot, like Jurassic Park when they see the giant pile of poo from the rhinoceros. Rhinoceros. From the rhinoceros.
The rhinoceros. I like that.
It's not a rhinoceros either. I'm a mess suddenly.
Is there muffin sauce on that rhinoceros?
It's a triceratops. Yes. Okay, from the triceratops, because Jurassic Park is very low on rhinoceroses.
It's true.
It's a giant pile of poo. That's how I felt about this situation. And it took a great deal of work for me to get to a point where I don't get tilted when I perceive that I'm losing at Warhammer 40K. How did I get there? I'm not entirely sure. Like, I'd love to tell you guys, this is my 10 easy steps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it off to the two people that don't get as pissed off about losing as me. And I'm going to let them talk. And then I'm going to see if I learn anything, and I'll try to apply it to my crazy brain. How's that sound, guys? Because I don't know what to tell them about how I got better other than awareness, which we've talked about before as being really important.
Yeah.
So who wants to go first?
Competitive or non-competitive? I can jump in with non-competitive stuff that in just my I don't know where it sort of came from. It might have been the only child thing and wanting to be involved in games and not left out. So you want to make it fun so people want to come back. But for whatever reason, I've never really been super competitive with that kind of games. The Warcraft rating was one of the kind of the bigger sort of organized things. That's not even really competitive, other than competing against other people in the group.
We did spend a lot of time looking at where we were ranked across other guilds.
Yeah,
when we were rating.
Yeah. There is definitely that.
Yeah.
But you're competing in parallel as opposed to it directly against.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Yeah. It wasn't a lot of PvP. I'm just trying to sort of calibrate where that comes in. I always noticed that it was very, very important. I still notice it to this day when it's really important to somebody to be competitive. I know, okay, we'll be serious, and I can be more serious than with my game, and they're not going to get bent out of shape about it. So, I can be more aggressive in those kind of situations where, for example, our friend Angie is a really good poker player, and we play friendly poker. It's not, high stakes anything, but she's very competitive and very good. And I'm middling to fair at best on a good day. But it's one of those things where, it kind of pushes you to try harder. It definitely does me. And it also allows you a little bit more room to play, a little more room to move around and be, like I said, be more aggressive with things you'd normally do. But what were you going to say, Billy?
So sort of in the middle between those 2 points. And for me, I've said this.
You are in the middle of us right now.
Middle and below. And that just,
this is a Billy sandwich is what's going on now.
Yeah, I did too many different things I could do with that, none of which really coalesced in my brain fast enough. My answer to how I have dealt with being better at, and I don't even want to say that it's losing, it's better at not winning, because that for me is the tough thing. It's the not winning as opposed to the losing. And that's subtle but important distinction for me, at least, is calibrating my expectations. What is the fat part of the bell curve for what's likely to happen here? How can I shift my outcomes towards the right of that bell curve? But, again, I don't go into a 40K tournament, for example, expecting to win it. Certainly not a 2-day one. A local RTT, I expect to win most of my games, but not all of them, and certainly not against the best players. And yet I can still have fun because in each interaction, I try to be introspective, set my standards. What am I trying to achieve here? Have I done the things that I know I need to do? If so, okay, I have succeeded. I might not have won, but but I've succeeded at my goals.
Your goal.
And then if me succeeding at what I know I can control doesn't lead to winning, and this comes back to the whole thing of why losing is important. All right, what do I need to add in order to achieve a victory? And if I do that, then I have succeeded in my goals, because I'm defining success and distinguishing success from victory, I think, is an important part of that. I have succeeded even if I haven't won, because success for me is getting better and improving. So like again, in 40K, at the end of every game I play, I try to have a 5-minute conversation with my opponent about what worked, what didn't work, where was the turning point. If one of us won or lost, like, can we point to a thing that we did that led us to winning or losing? And I can think of like one game in the past 5 years where I was like, I came in with a plan. I executed the plan. The plan worked perfectly, and I won. I don't think I can learn anything from this other than do that exact same thing again. It happened once, and it worked.
That's still learning something, Billy.
Yeah, but, well, what we learned is that melta guns are really good into plague marines who are out in the open. Who knew? But yeah, it's just it's like I said, it's being precise in what you're trying to achieve. So success versus victory, for me, is what helps.
I think that the beautiful nugget, and everything you said was great. There was a beautiful nugget inside of it, though, that is setting expectations, right? Setting expectations is a big thing for me. I need to go in knowing what are table stakes, right? What is it, and what do I have to do, and then what do I want to? So let me be more specific. If I'm going to a local tournament, let's say 40 people at Warhammer 40K, I am one of 3 people probably in the room that's going to win that event. Okay, and I know that. And I know who the other 2 people are, and I usually know what they're playing, and I've usually done a unreasonable amount of prep in my brain. Okay? So going to that tournament, though, is my expectation that I'm going to win? No, it is not. I would like to win. I have prepared to win. My expectation, though, is a winning record. I do not want to ever go to a Warhammer 40K tournament and have less wins than losses. That's my personal benchmark. Everybody has to have their own. Aside from that, there's a goal of I want to have fun. And that's hard for me because when I get intense and my brain locks in, I'm enjoying myself, but I'm not relaxing and I'm not having fun. And those are all different for my brain. My brain's happy, but I myself physically am under a great deal of stress.
Yeah.
And I'm not relaxed. And so there's a side note here that I want to come back to about playing against your friends that I want to talk about in a second. But so, oh man, Gusta barking really is messing with my brain right now. So there's this idea of expectations where you have to set what you're trying to do. Now, I want to talk to everybody about the concept of victory ice cream. Victory ice cream is a concept that everyone needs. I flipping adore ice cream. It's my favorite thing in the world, food-wise. If I could have it every day without dying, I would. I like it in multiple flavors. I like it in multiple types. I like milkshakes. I like it all, okay? Whenever I get home from a tournament, I have victory ice cream. Period. I always do. And when I get my victory ice cream, I usually justify to Chuck or to Stephanie, whoever's around, why am I having victory ice cream? And it's usually funny, but there's a lot of truth in it. I went to this tournament wanting to know how good my Yanari list is and wanting to know what a bad matchup would be for it. And I figured that out. And I had 5 games against 5 people I enjoyed, and I had a good time. I won. Victory ice cream. Right? Like, there's always something at every event that you can latch onto and say that right there. I liked all of my opponents, and all 5 games were relaxing, and I had a great time, and I laughed the whole time. Victory ice cream. So before I talk about playing my situation of playing with friends, do you guys like the concept of victory ice cream? Do you have a similar concept?
I have 2 thoughts on on that whole concept and sort of what an issue we're sort of dancing around. So we've been talking about perspective is important and how shifting your perspective is important. And I think the one thing you need to remember, especially with anything competitive, yes, you are competing against other people, but who is your biggest critic? Yourself. So you're really competing against yourself. You're competing against your former self. You're being ideally your best self in that situation. So being able to adjust your perspective and realize that, like Colin was saying, that my definition of winning here, victory, is all of those things: having fun, doing well, learning something. That's a victory. But that having that victory and realizing that the real competition that you're in is with yourself. If you're trying to improve, that is the real competition.
Yeah. Just the concept of victory ice cream took me a little bit out of gaming, but short story, when for freshman year of college, I did everyone on my floor a favor. I gained all of their freshman 15. So I probably put on about 150 pounds freshman year. It was not good. And then sophomore year, it's like, hey, let's not use gym shorts as underwear because it's the only thing that fits, because that's unhealthy. And in order to build the habits of getting better, I had to build in rewards as well, because you don't lose 150 pounds in a week, but you can go to the gym for 2 weeks in a row and then buy yourself a new keyboard for your computer. So if after 2 weeks I did something good, I got a reward. And building in that reward cycle to give yourself a reason to strive for something and to take the pressure off, and to, you can't get all the way there right now, but you can get a little bit better and give yourself that dopamine hit. So I need to figure out how to build victory ice cream into my current life, because that's actually missing.
So I also think that there is a difference for me at playing against a stranger and a friend at a tournament. And I have a lot more fun playing you for the second time. That's part of my wiring. And I've thought a lot about that. And I would love to say it's because I have social anxiety. I don't. I'd love to say that it's because the person that I'm that I now know what I'm getting. That is part of it for me. I know that person's not going to yell, or I know they're not going to be a jerk, or I know that we're going to have a good game. Like that is a big part of it for me. But unfortunately, I uncovered something disgusting in my brain. Disgusting is too strong, but it's a funny way to say it. The actuality of why I have more fun playing against people I've played before is because I think I'm going to win. And that is so messed up that I'm trying to come to terms with it. There's people that I love playing 40K against that I know are not going to beat me. And when I run into them at a tournament, I have this fantastic game with them because I enjoy them and they enjoy me. And I'm on my best behavior because I am relatively confident that I'm going to win. And so the part of me that locks in, the gear that locks in a really hard, challenging situation, that lowers the fun and relaxation element for me, doesn't engage in the same way. I just thought I'd share that in case there's anyone out there in the world that is similar to me. This is something I'm actively trying to work on. And if you're one of my friends that thinks this is you, I apologize.
Can I get Chris?
I know it's me.
The first hack at this.
Go ahead. Please.
I actually don't think that that's disgusting. I think that that's normal. And if I can explain why, I think it's normal, and we've built out the context for why in this conversation of expectations are hugely important to both understanding and to enjoyment. A place that I think all gamers should look is the guy who I think to this day is still the head of one of the head makers of Magic the Gathering, this guy named Mark Rosewater. And he's been writing an article for like 20 or 30 years. And if you Google Mark Rosewater communications theory, you'll come up with this article that has been really influential in how I see the world. And he talks about, if you want people to understand you, or to have fun, you need to set expectations and then meet expectations. And if you do that, both in terms of communication, like, hey, I'm about to tell you this really interesting thing about X, Y, or Z, and then I'm going to tell you about X, Y, or Z. You're going to do a better job of processing if I give you that roadmap for how to listen to me. Similarly, for fun, so much of fun is I think I'm going to get a thing, and then I get that thing. That's how the human brain is wired to enjoy it. And so all what I'm taking from there to what you were saying, Colin, you are able to have expectations and then meet those expectations.
Yeah,
whereas
sure.
in that first interaction, you don't have expectations. And so all of this anxiety can come into it, and that makes it be less fun. I don't think it's toxic or bad that part of your fun is I have an expectation that I'll win. That's fine. That's just realistic based on your experience. And then you're meeting it. That's how most people experience fun. So give yourself a break on that.
Well, and that's why Billy's on the show, folks. That was the most positive way to see that as possible. Yes. It's almost like his parents loved him. I can't be certain, but
they didn't do.
Good for you.
Good for you, Billy.
Good for you. Glad to hear.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair way of looking at it, I think.
Just to piggyback on that
please.
last bit, that really reminded me something from work I've done in e-learning and stuff where we're teaching things online, and the way that you write courses like that, the way you construct them, is here's what we're going to tell you, and here now I'm telling you, and look what we just told you.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the three things, and that is just a mechanical. It just works. That's just a mechanical thing, routine that you can put yourself into. If you're trying to learn something, learn it over and over. Repetition is so important.
I'm going to share an adjacent tangent that is not related to the topic, but is related to the topic. This is a thing, especially if you're a young person, you're trying to learn human interaction. Here's the thing. If you want to help somebody, first, ask them if they'd like help. As an example, do you mind if I offer a thought on what you could do next time? That question goes into their brain. This person's trying to help me. Of course I would like help. And everybody almost always says yes. And then you can be like, this is what I saw. Now still be humble and kind. Don't be like, thank you for telling me that it's okay to blast you. But that question of can I help? People receive that as love. Even from strangers. I kid you not. So when you offer them the opportunity to accept your help first, they are phenomenally more likely to listen and to make value out of it. Mm-hmm. This is something I'm mad about because a friend will come to me and say blah 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 blah, and I'll say blah blah blah, and I'll give them a solution. That's not what they're looking for. To go back to Billy's earlier, do you want me to listen and be supportive, or do you want me to try to fix it? Right.
Right.
That's another version of this, right? Your wife says, please try to fix it. Okay. She's opted in, right? Consent has been given that she would like help. Mm-hmm. My help now will be much more appreciated than if I had done it without asking that.
Yeah.
Fair.
That's a big thing we teach in sales.
Well, it's so, and this goes back to earlier in this conversation, we were talking about, feelings aren't rational, but that doesn't mean they're irrelevant. The human mind is fundamentally irrational. Anyone who tells you, we are rational actors, that's just wrong. But just because we're irrational does not mean we're not predictable and programmable. Right. What Colin is explaining is some stuff that's hardwired into the way the human brain works. Framing of how I'm going to explain something to you. If I say, can I offer you a thought? Harsh feedback. You're a moron. Harsh feedback. Same feedback will be received in totally different ways because of how it was set up. And if you just know that about people, you can go through the world in a much better, happier, more productive way. If anyone really likes reading, Michael Lewis's The Undoing Project talks about how there are these two Israeli behavioral psychologists who created behavioral psychology. And it's just a fascinating read about oh, humans are not rational actors, but we're predictable. And how are we predictable? And it's so well written. I can't recommend it highly enough.
I have a line that I've used before with friends that I think people listening might value. Billy, I'll pretend it's Billy. Billy, I've noticed something that I believe would help you, and I'd like to share it, but I'm a little uncomfortable with how to word it. Would it be okay if would you accept it if I had some kind of radical candor? And Billy's probably going to say yes, and now I can be a little bit more blunt, a little bit more awkward, because I've set the expectation for him that I would like to help, but I'm not exactly sure how. But damn it, if I'm not going to try, right? And so if I accidentally get offensive, he's going to be less likely to get offended, right? There's these verbal tricks is wrong, verbal cadences that we can teach ourselves, and we will on the episode Colin's Guide to Making Friends. This is in that, as is the Columbo question, which we've talked about before on Best in Faction a few different times. What?
One more thing.
We were just both doing the Columbo thing.
Yeah.
Oh, just one more thing. So yeah. Okay. So the only thing we haven't talked about in losing is we haven't really given advice for how to lose more graciously while playing a game. We haven't really talked about that, and I think that's a topic for the 40K people. So, Billy, how do you lose gracefully at 40K?
I just laugh at myself. I just, this is what I was trying to do. This is what I screwed up. It's wrong. All right, I'm not going to win, but I am going to smile and laugh and tell jokes.
Yeah.
And it's just, I have to say, okay, victory on the score sheet is impossible. Victory on the interpersonal relationship is still on the board. Let me turn my anger, put it in a box, pull it out after the game, laugh at it. This is just what it is. Sometimes things don't go right. And I'll learn from it, and we'll talk about that later. But for now, I will keep picking up my models left, right, and center as you roll those rerollable twos, Mr. Custodes player.
So I had a time in 8th edition, this is related to what you were saying, Billy, where I was playing Tyranids on Dawn of War, which this is very 40K. Sorry for those of you that aren't 40K players. Tyranids on Dawn of War against Alpha Legion at the time that Alpha Legion could just start 9 inches off your deployment zone. At this time, if I'm playing Chuck, if Chuck goes first, I lose most of my army. Chuck goes first. I lose 800 points, 700 points of my 2,000 points. And I flip out because I'm a bad loser at this point in my 40K career. And Chuck says, stop and play that fucking game. That's what Chuck says. And I stop and I take a breath. I think we went and got water. Like, Chuck's really good at calming me down. And then we finished the game and I won. That analogy is why you can't flip out when you're losing. Because you, no matter how good at the game you are, do not know when you have lost until it is really, really far gone. And it's obvious to both sides at that point. You have to stay in the game for 2 reasons. 1, you don't know what's going to happen. And 2, no one dice roll decides the winner of a game. Don't come up to me and tell me that you would have won if you'd rolled a 4 on the final turn of the game. No. Every single decision you made, every single die roll is all part of the beautiful tapestry that is a game. All of that matters. Every single bit of it matters. Maybe your opponent plays great on the first turn and you get wrecked. You don't know if they're going to be a bonehead after that. You don't know. They might play terrible after that. Maybe your dice are going to be really hot on the next turn. You can't win a game because of dice, but you sure can come from behind a little bit quicker if you get some dice help. So that's a really big thing for me. And where that came from for me is an interesting anecdote. I want to interrupt people. I think quickly. I have already decided what the next thing I'm going to say is. I do not need for you to finish your thought. I know exactly what you're saying, and I would like to now interrupt and continue the conversation at the speed that my brain would prefer to go. It makes me an ass. People hate being interrupted. Not only do people hate being interrupted, they hate their question being answered without a pause. They think that you weren't listening and that you're being disrespectful. So not only do I carefully have to wait for people to finish talking to start talking, which is very hard for me, but I also have to give a pregnant pause before I answer the question. That is exceptionally challenging for me. And here's how I learned it. My therapist said, over the next month, I'd like you to listen to what everyone says and predict in your brain what they're like while they're talking, predict where they're going in your brain and hold on to that and then see if you're right. It's something to do that your brain can do that will slow you down enough that you can actually listen. So think about, okay, I think this is where Billy's going. Oh, and then she said, if you are not right, 98% of the time, you cannot interrupt people. Because that means you're interrupting people when you're wrong. And guess what's going to really upset someone? Interrupting them when they're wrong, when you're wrong about what they're trying to say. Oh, no, you don't need to finish explaining this to me because XYZ, but that's not what I'm fucking talking about, right?
Yeah.
That's a big thing. And similarly, you do not know that you're going to win or lose 40K unless there's like a massive, there are situations, right? Maybe there's a massive skill gap, right? And you know the person, like maybe you're brand new to 40K and you're playing Nick Nanavati or John Lennon. Like there are situations where you're like, yes, I'm in fact going to lose. But I'm talking about in a normal everyday game of 40K or any game, Marvel Crisis Protocol, poker, whatever, you can't decide early on or even halfway through that it's all done. You have to keep trying because you will surprise yourself because you are not a future telling genius.
Mm-hmm.
That's mine.
Yeah.
Incredibly long story.
It's so true. I mean, the thing, keeping your head in the game sounds cliche. So true. Being able to not be flustered by those things, not be taken down a notch just by emotions. Back to the feeling emotions, yeah, but not in a competitive situation. You want to be able to separate that and say, oh crap, like you said, I just lost 700 points worth of stuff. What do I do now? To be able to use that inflection point instead of blowing up and being super hard on yourself, to make a turn and say, okay, well, that happens. What do I have left? What can I do? And just attacking it that way. And that is the other part of that, is that discipline is so difficult. It's such a hard thing to master. It takes a lot of work to undo that. And it's because we all find ourselves kind of in that spot.
You guys see me interrupt Chris there? I started talking and you weren't done, and then I had to stop talking. That's the thing that I do that really drives me crazy, where I'll be like, because I'll start talking because I'll think that person's done. Go ahead, Billy.
So two thoughts there. One, just very idiosyncratic to what we're doing, but I was listening to basically what amounted to a podcast about podcasting. They were actually talking about Pardon the Interruption, the TV show, and why it's so successful. They were relating it back to podcasting. And so what Chris did right there, where he nodded and did a bit of a verbal cue, they were saying that was good for this kind of a thing because it turns it a little bit more into a conversation. You don't necessarily want to be silent. You want to be throwing the conversation back and forth a little bit. So there's nothing wrong with participating when someone is talking at you. That's one thing. But what is challenging is not interrupting and just taking it all away from them. And Lord knows I have struggled with that a lot in my life for almost the exact same reasons as Colin was expressing. And again, having taught people to negotiate and speak to each other for a long period of time, most of whom shared that difficulty, what I would always tell them is, someone's monologuing at you, pick out the one thing you want to respond to that and focus on that and think about how you're going to think about that. And you can just sort of background the rest of what they're telling you. And if something else comes up, okay, start chewing on that nugget. But you don't have to respond to everything everyone says in a monologue. You just have to pick up one piece, and they won't notice that you're responding to point 4 of 10 points. They're like, oh, that's what you want to talk about? Cool. And that for me was hugely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Takes the pressure off for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about listening on a future episode. The correct amount of time. So on a sales call, in my world, the correct amount of let's say it's just me and the customer. There's just two of us there. The correct amount of time for me to speak is about 15 to 20%. I am a salesperson. I am known for being talkative. I am known for being wordy. That's not the right thing. The right thing is to listen, because they're going to tell me what I need to do to sell them. They're going to tell me what their problem is. They're going to tell me what they're trying to do. They're going to give me the keys to being able to help them, not to trick them, to be able to help them. That's what I'm there to do. I did want to say one more thing about the game state and not flipping out. I don't know if this exists anymore, but there used to be this magazine for Magic the Gathering that had a page in it called Magic the Puzzling.
Yeah, also done by Mark Rosewater. So
there you go. And it would be like, it's you're at 5 life on their turn. They're going to kill you. What do you do in order to win the game? Right. Mm-hmm. I loved that. And my brain was so good at that. This is the problem. Figure it out. Right. Mm-hmm. And so often when I think things are going really badly, I try to turn it into a tactical decision rather than a strategic decision. A strategic decision is, where am I going to put my units and roughly where are they going to go? What am I going to shoot at first? How am I going to do the mission? Like those are strategic things. Okay. Tactical things are, what do I do right now to maximize the tools I have left? What are the specific actions my units need to take to move me towards winning, getting points or killing their thing or hiding or whatever? Mm-hmm. I really like to try to take a deep breath. I always, like I've talked about before, I always take a minute before my turn and think about my turn as a whole puzzle. And I'll run through things. If this unit goes here, this is what happens. If this unit goes here, this is what happens. If this unit goes here, this is what happens. And all I'm doing is taking the puzzle that I've been given and figuring out how the pieces go together. I'm not thinking about the game. I'm not thinking about losing. I'm just solving for right now. And that helped me a lot. And I didn't think about that till these guys said enough words that made my brain cue into that's what I was doing. And then I started thinking about Magic the Puzzling. And then I wondered if I could Google them. That's a whole train I went down while we were talking. So yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
There's one of the points to that is being in the moment, and that's one of my big personal philosophies. I don't know if you've heard the book Be Here Now, but that hit me very hard 20 something years ago, and it's stuck with me, and it's amazing how much not worrying about all of those eventualities and focusing, like you're saying, okay, I can't worry about strategy. I'm worried about this situation right here, this thing, mm-hmm. not all the other stuff that's going on, and how important that focus is to getting better and adapting to losing, I guess.
And I'm actually good at the opposite thing there that from most people. I'm actually bad at perspective. I'm bad at I was playing Marvel Crisis Protocol against my good friend Michael earlier in the week, and I had a turn where things went really wrong. They just went really wrong for me, and it was frustrating. But I wasn't trying to be sassy or grumpy about it. I was just trying to acknowledge that I was frustrated. Like I've decided not to roll any armor saves this turn. That's not going to go great for me in the broader strategy. The way that Michael interpreted that was that Michael heard that. Now Michael's brilliant, right? And Michael hears that and his computer and his brain's going, I'm losing. And Colin's upset about some effing die rolls, right? That's the way that Michael's processing this. And so later he comes to me and he says, hey, this is what I heard, and this is how it happened, and this is what's going on. And it gave me a great opportunity to take a step back, which I couldn't have done in the moment. So good on Michael for realizing that he needed to come later and ask me about this. And I took a step back, and what I realized is I did not have a game state view. and Michael did. I was so focused in on exactly what I'm doing right now that I had no awareness of who was winning and who was losing.
Yeah.
I was only caring about this thing right here. And unfortunately, that's something I struggle with. Sometimes I need people to be like, hold on, take a step back.
Yeah.
Hold on. Like, because I'm all up in here. I'm all in the details doing detail things. So, yeah. Billy, you look bored.
No, I'm thinking about that, and I'm trying to self-analyze myself as opposed to self-analyze someone else. And
all analyzing is self-analyzing because you're the one doing it.
Oh,
subject versus object, but yes. And so just trying to figure out where I fall on that spectrum, because I know I'm not what you just described, Colin, where I get so focused on the micro. I actually think one of the things that I'm good at is if I'm rolling really hot or rolling really not hot, only commenting about that in the context of the broader thing. Like if I'm crushing someone and I hit a stretch where I just roll 8 1s out of 9 dice, I will make a joke out about that, but I won't like actually tilt me. And I think the thing that I need to get better at is getting a better handle of what that game state is. Because sometimes I think I'm winning and I'm not. And sometimes I think I'm losing and I'm not. And I just, that's what was going through my head, is how can I get better at that piece of it?
Which is why you shouldn't be spending time, am I winning or am I losing? Because that fact, well, there's an exception to this, but in general, that fact does not affect what you're doing. It does if you're losing by a lot and you need to make a high risk play, like that's a thing.
Right.
But in general, right, the game starts, there's whatever game it is, there's XYZ way you get points to win. You need to focus on maximizing those points. That's how you play the game. Thinking, am I winning or am I losing at every moment is something that I do, and it makes me neurotic. Don't be like Colin. Colin's neurotic.
Can I actually jump in there? Because I actually think you said 2 different things, and I think it's important to separate the 2 of those.
They are 2 different
You said,
things.
Well, okay, then let me be sure that I'm hearing the 2 different things that you're saying. Maximizing your score versus winning. I actually think that's the biggest thing that I struggle with in 40K right now. And I blame it on the fact that I came from fantasy, where the only way to win was to table your opponent. There were no objectives you stood on. It was kill the opposing army. Mm-hmm. So your score and winning were, in my mind, identical. But in 40K, it's, you can win 1 point to 2 points. Yeah. And so you're not necessarily maximizing your score. You're maximizing your opportunity to have a higher score than your opponent. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's an important distinction. And I know for a fact it's one of the things that I am the worst at, because I look at a board state and see, how can I make the biggest, splashiest, boldest, kaboomiest play? And it is often the wrong one. And almost every time, speaking of losing, when I lose, it's because I dedicate, and Colin, the one time we ever played, it's one of the many reasons I lost, but one of the key pivotal points was I dumped 7 units to kill 1 when 1 unit would have done it, because it was big and splashy and crazy. And because I was trying to score the most points, mm-hmm. as opposed to scoring more points than you.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's a great example. And what I would say is, what I try to do is, instead of thinking about winning or losing, I think about maximizing score differential.
Yeah.
Like Billy's talking about, where I'm going to score these and I'm going to do this thing to stop Chris from scoring as many points. Yes. And if I do that all throughout the game, I'll win. But that's the outcome of the mechanic,
right?
Rather than the focus through the whole game.
Yes.
And it allows you to be much calmer and more analytical, and it also cuts down on saltiness to do it.
But also may not look much like winning in the moment.
Well, but that's the thing is, and this, again, spending a long time teaching people how to negotiate competitively, don't focus on winning the competition. Focus on doing each individual action well. And mm-hmm. that will, ironically, lead to winning. But the goal is not to win. The goal is to do each thing correctly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we are at a good stopping point. But before we do, I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to share closing thoughts about all of this. But I will not call on someone. Which one of you would like to go first?
I'll talk.
Go ahead.
the way we talked about this at the beginning is the right thing to say about this. Losing is not a goal, but losing doesn't mean that you've capital L lost at life. If you can change your perspective on losing to this is an opportunity to learn rather than just an opportunity to beat up on yourself, so much good can come from that. And if you take nothing else from this episode, that perspective as a goal to work towards, not as something to necessarily measure yourself against each and every interaction you have, but as a goal to work towards, I think you will be very pleased with the result.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I think just really my main point is it's inevitable. It's inevitable, Mr. Anderson. You know, it.
Do you hear that sound, Mr. Anderson?
It's
That's the sound of inevitability.
And Neo died right after that.
I know, right?
End of
But
movie.
did he?
Well, and then he came back.
So
he lost, and then he won.
And then he learned. Yeah, it's just it's going to happen. Get right with it because there's really no other way. And being content with your own personal victories is fine too. You know, it doesn't have to. Your mom doesn't have to care. Your friends don't have to care. As long as it was something beneficial for you, that's at the end of the day, that's what matters.
I live in a professional world of winning and losing, more so than most people, not athletes, but most people. I've lost deals in my career because I screwed up. I've pissed off the decision maker because of my sometimes abrasive personality. I've messed things up. I've destroyed things. I've broken things, and every single time I learned something. I am wildly competitive, and I'm a little bit neurotic, and I'm too hard on myself. But one thing's for sure: every time I failed, I've learned something. And this time, at this point in my life, is no different. I've learned a lot, and I've learned important things about what's important to me at a job to make me successful, and what's important to me about being a parent, and what's important to me about being a husband. You know, what are these priorities, and how do I improve, and how do I get better from the part of my life that I'm seeing as loss? Mm-hmm. Remember that losing does not mean you're a failure. Mm-hmm. And with that, I think we're ready to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for listening to this. It is absolutely the favorite thing I do on the network right now. It's incredibly, incredibly helpful to us, and we're hoping that it's helpful to you. We've been getting wonderful comments. We'd like more. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever. We'd like to know. Don't tell us if you're indifferent. That doesn't matter. Good or bad, whatever you want to do. We'd love to be able to keep improving this. I think it's just a really important show, and I'm really, really proud to be doing it with my good friend Chris, and this time with Billy. So for Better Human, Better Gamer, what?
Oh, I was just saying Billy this time because he's the guest.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So for best in faction, that's not right. For This Week in 40, no, that's not right either. For Better Human, Better Gamer,
there you go.
He's Chris. Our guest is Billy, and I'm Colin because somebody has to be, and we'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope that it was helpful. Bye now.
Bye.